And next one is economics and economic theory of Marxism. Basically, Karl Marx, as explained by economist Viktor Galko from the Red University on 18th October 2023. So, dear comrades, according to our plan, the second hour I answer questions and maybe we discuss things. And they asked me a question which isn't quite unclear, a bit unclear. This is my fault because I missed some links in this chain. So the first thing we do is pretty simple. We'll do like so. No, the question was actually very correct, proper to ask. How is capital different from all other works? There's a chain, as I said, figuratively, and each chain is linked with the neighboring chain one. If we get rid of one of the links, everything will fall apart. So here I did that because I had little time to little time. So we'll amend that. So the real situation is actually like so. So this is an hour he works for himself, the necessary work time. And this one is surplus work time. 7 hours he works for the capitalist. So yeah, in conditions of capitalism, the working day falls apart or is divided in two parts. First is the necessary working time when, and the rest he works for the capitalist. This one's called the necessary work time. That is necessary for him to provide for life, for living. And the rate of surplus value can be expressed in three ways. So it's denoted by the M dash, or by this comma, inverted comma, or apostrophe. It's called prime. So M comma, and this is a relation between, or a ratio between this surplus work time to necessary work time, necessary labor time to necessary to surplus labor time ratio. We can see. So I'm gonna shorten that. Of course, we write the surplus labor time here. This is the surplus above, to necessary labor time here below. That's the ratio. So he works for 8 hours. Working time is embodied in the product. So the result of this working day is the product or the commodity. So the necessary working time equals so this is the surplus product. This is the necessary product. This is the relation of surplus product to the necessary product. We're speaking about the value, of course, the value. So we remember the commodity has two sides, two aspects, use value and value. So in any commodity produced in capitalism, it has the ratio of the surplus value and wages or wage capital, variable or wage capital, part of the capital that is spent by the capitalist on acquiring, purchasing workforce or labor power. The problem that is in Russian is the same word combination, рабочая сила. So in English there's a slight difference. Workforce, as in workers, and labor power. That's a specific thing by Marx, the ability of a worker to do work. So a capitalist basically purchases that labor power. But of course, who provides labor power? The workers. So he basically purchases the workers in a sense, but not scientifically, not speaking strictly scientifically. Speaking strictly scientifically, capitalist purchases, labor power, the ability to work of a worker. So how does this process happen? How do we solve this contradiction? The fact that commodity has because commodity has a dual-fold character, twofold character. Commodity has twofold character, so accordingly, labor of a worker in conditions of capitalism, of commodity production, also has a twofold character. So a worker, by concrete labor, his concrete labor that he does, transfers the value of work, of labor power, transfers the value of labor power onto the ready product and creates new value. So this thing here is called the new value. According to statistics, it received a name added value or surplus value. So this new value consists of surplus value and wages and wage capital. So these are three expressions of the same, but the surplus value ratio, rate of surplus value, also has a second name. So it's called an accurate measure of the degree of exploitation of the labor force. And what is exploitation? Exploitation. This is a widely used term, exploitation. Exploitation is exploitation means or is appropriation of surplus labor. Appropriation of surplus labor. So accordingly of surplus product or added product. As we know, there were three exploiters systems. Exploitative systems, right? Economic systems. The first was the slave owners system, the second was feudal, and the third was capitalist. So during slave ownership or slave owning, there were no problems with quote unquote, because a slave wasn't considered a human being. Only slave owners were considered human beings. So the whole difference of a slave from the means of production, all the difference was that we are basically means of labor, or slaves are basically means of labor. So there are talking means of labor and not talking, or and the slave was a talking, right, one. So everything that slave created automatically belonged to the slave owner. So during feudalism, the situation is different. There was a landlord, feudal, who owned the land, and peasants, bond slaves, or this is the second base estate, bond slaves. So in the West they're known as peasant serfs, but it's actually, I think, different in Russia. So they're bond slaves basically. So they are peasants who are bonded with the land. They cannot leave. Basically they're slaves. Although, of course, the bourgeois history lessons, they will tell otherwise. Of course, they were slightly freer than slaves, but basically still slaves. Anyways, it's called крепостной. Креп, the root means sort of bond. They were attached. They were sort of attached to the land because they couldn't leave. The feudal could choose how they to marry them, could marry them, buy them, sell them, so basically slaves. That had their own small plot of earth, so slightly their own property that, of course, they owned to the feudal, but nevertheless. So, bond slaves. So right now it's they like to speak like that the elections should be clear, clean, and all the relations in the economy should be clean. So the cleanest relations, exploiter relations, were during feudalism, I think. The clearest and cleanest relations were feudal relations. Why? Because the peasants, if we speak about them, he had these, bond slave peasants. He had this small patch of land that he worked on, grew something there, part of his time. And the other part of his time, he went to work on landlord's field. So, there you go. So everything he worked there belonged to, everything, the result of fruits of his labor belonged to the landlord. And he had also his own that was on the patch of land. On his small patch of land, everything he gathered was his. All the crops were his. But in capitalism, during capitalism, it's all concealed, sort of. So on the surface of capitalist relations, there is no exploitation. So during capitalism relations, it's all sort of concealed. So on the surface of capitalist relations, there is no exploitation. You can see no exploitation on the surface. Everything's clean, clear. You come to be hired by a capitalist. First of all, who are you? You are a free man. Are you a slave? No. Are you a bond peasant? No. Do you have a passport in your pocket? If you don't like this capitalist, you go to another one. If you don't like another one, go to a third one. You are free. This word, freedom, democracy, equity, brotherhood, equality, brotherhood, are the motto of the bourgeois revolution. And they still propagate this from every direction, in every media. You're a free person. Sign a free agreement. As any producer of goods, of commodities. So the commodity producer sells his commodity. Someone likes it. Then, they exchange commodities, and everything is just, and everything's downright straightforward. And of course, the prices may be different, but here, get the same. You're free to do that. No one makes you sign the labor agreement with the capitalist. No, you do that by yourself. And as a result, you get this thing here. This picture. 1 hour you work for yourself, and 7 hours you work for a capitalist. And it's all according to the laws of commodity production. And it's all reflected in the laws, in the labor code, in the criminal code, and so on. According to them, all the commodities belong to capitalists, although they are produced by the hands of the workers and of those who help them. And the workers are those who help the capitalist. So, we're gonna finish here with this big issue. On this scheme, on this picture, I think it's very clear to see that the opposition between class interests. You can see the opposition of class interests. So what is the working class interested in? To increase this part, right, of the necessary labor time and increase their wages. So that the wages would be closer to the value of the labor power. Or maybe above it. What is capitalist interested in? In the opposite, right? So on the market, in the conditions of capitalism, two opposing forces collide. Class of capitalists and class of workers. What will be the result? What is it defined by? It depends, and it's defined by the struggle. Only by the struggle. Nothing else. If the working class won't fight, won't struggle, the capitalists will take this part away from him, from the working class. And if it will struggle, then the working class will get his part from the capitalist. Okay, so the most recent example is there are certain, I won't bring you any examples of single fighters, people who let their struggle alone. There are certain workers very important for the for the employers whom he needs, whom the employer needs for some reason, that can actually demand the increase in, who can demand the increase in wages, and they will get it. But this doesn't characterize the situation as a whole. To be successful here, you can be successful here only by organizing as an organized force, because on one pole you get this group capitalist, or you get this aggregated capitalist, and on the other pole you get the aggregated working class. So the most recent example is we've got an organization in our city called Metrostroy. They built the metro of the northern capital, so St. Petersburg Metro. They build new metro stations in St. Petersburg. You probably heard of this company and heard this story. There was lots of problems with building the metro during the construction. We don't care about that. So they've created a new organization. They found some leftists came, comrade workers, and comrades tunnelers, and they were leftist, who also had the same problems as depicted here, of course. So, of course, they realized that you have to struggle for the increase in wages, for better working conditions, decrease in the length of the working day, and so on. So they have created a labor union, started working to organize, and it's great. And the organization is big, about 700 people. That's a considerable force. So what follows that? After you create the labor union, when it gains power, more than half of workers will be in this union. Then in this union, then you can put in claims, make demands to put in claims to the employers. And then do collective actions. To do all that, to increase wages and etc. So what happened actually? They haven't reached the number of 50% of the company. So, so that the labor union would be 50% plus one people. Although there are two ways you can enter the labor union, or give, or you can give the letter of attorney or a warrant to the labor union, sort of. So that the labor union would represent your interests. They use both ways there in that company, metro company. So the management of this company, of the metro builders, have increased all the tariffs, all the salaries by 27%. All of you work someplace, right? Just imagine that your employer raises your salary by 27%, like so. And you haven't done any collective actions yet. What does this tell us? In this concrete case, the management understands the force of organized workers, working people, and and workers of physical labor, first of all. So they didn't raise the salary by 2 or 5% as they usually do. So they paid 27% sort of in advance. That's a huge number. So that's just an example of what the organized struggle leads to. So, okay, please ask your questions. That's a hard question for me. I couldn't answer it. Maybe you will help me answer this question. My name is Vladimir. I'm a former builder. I'm a former foreman, bricklayer foreman. Now I'm retired. 10 years ago, we worked on the Proletarsky factory or plant, and we replaced the roof there, repaired the roof. So I'm a curious person, and I've been to many shops there, and people work on the people there work on milling, turning machines. Very often these machines, they are as old as they're left from the Great Patriotic War. So from 1940s, they're as old as they were produced around that time. And near them, a modern machine stands, with the modern numeric control machine stands. New machine tool, right? With numeric control. And no one uses it. No one uses it. As paradoxically as it is. So we got this big board there. It's got trigonometric formula there. I don't know if they actually use them or they're there just for show. But the fact is that it is there. So Victor Ivanovich, tell me please, Marx described capitalism of the second half of 19th century, right? On a plant, on the factory, there are 80-90% of workers, and the rest are managers. Maybe less than 10%. So, of course, in these conditions, the surplus value was produced by the workers. Definitely. But in modern conditions, what if they used not those old machine tools, but the new one with numeric control? 5 to 6 machine tools would be unoccupied then.
То есть произошел бы рост органического строения капитала по великому Марксу.
So there would be increase in organic composition of capital according to Marx.
Отношение С к В.
The ratio C to V ratio.
Так вот, в этих условиях,
so in these conditions,
я не понимаю,
I don't understand
кто же в нынешних условиях
who in modern conditions produces the surplus value. If the value of the equipment, of machine tools, of the most sophisticated equipment is very high, and the value of wages is low. Doesn't this mean that in modern conditions the technological conditions produce this surplus value, not the workers? Thank you. Okay, clear. Your question is multilateral or multifaceted, multi-level question. He used a funny idiom, cannot translate it. Let's start with the beginning. So the fundamental stipulation by Marx is that the creation of added value is a function by living labor, by a labor of a worker, of workers. So embodied in means of production, living labor, life labor, or direct labor. So this is what the predecessors of Marx, this is the question that the predecessors of Marx couldn't answer. And he solved it. There are machine tools, right? So this is like quote-unquote dead labor. And there are workers, life labor. A worker is laboring, laborer is, does his labor. What does he do? Using this concrete labor, he transfers the value of the means of production onto the ready product. He creates, by the abstract labor, he creates new value, and new value is the salary, the wages, and surplus value. That's the first thing. Yeah, just let me... Yeah, but these conditions are technologically advanced. The C will cost a lot. So the W will be very big because of C. You ask the question, I'm going to answer it, and then you... So that's the first thing. So added value is created by live labor. The influence of prices on added value, of surplus value, is not nothing. The Prices don't influence that.
На что влияет
What?
Значит, вы
Sorry, of C. C doesn't influence surplus
об этом
value.
речь идет.
That's
На
what
что
we're talking
влияет
about. What
цвет? Значит, вы
does C influence?
помянули еще одну
You-
важнейшую категорию органическое строение капитала.
You mentioned a very important category, organic composition of capital.
Это отношение
This is a ratio
постоянного капитала
of constant capital to variable capital ratio.
обозначается
This
таким образом. Ну, стоимость
denoted
товара,
like so.
стоимость капиталистически
So the
произведенного
cost
товара
of a commodity produced,
складывается из трех
capitalistically
элементов.
produced,
Стоимость постоянного капитала
is the price of constant capital or fixed capital, non-wage
стоимость
capital,
переменного капитала плюс
plus
прибавочная стоимость.
the value of wage capital
Прибавочная
or variable capital plus surplus value,
стоимость
and the
это
surplus
и
value
заработная плата.
uh,
Это новая стоимость.
and wages is the new value or value as new.
Отношение
So this is the ratio C to V.
называется органическим строением капитала.
This is called the organic composition of capital.
Если быть совсем точным, отношение
To be exact,
стоимости постоянного капитала к переменному, который определяется
the relation of constant capital to variable capital or non-wage capital to wage capital that is defined by
техническим строением, это есть органическое строение капитала. К переменному, которое определяется его техническим строением,
that is determined by its technical composition is its
это есть органическое строение капитала.
organic composition.
Что происходит
So what
в
happens
развитии капитализма? Факт,
during the development of capitalism?
зарегистрирован всеми экономистами,
This fact is noticed, registered by all economists
что органическое
and
строение
Marx,
капитала
that the organic composition of capital
увеличивается.
is increasing.
То есть на каждого
So,
рабочего приходится все больше и
On
больше
each worker there are
средств производства.
more and more means of production.
Самый простой пример.
So the simple
Во
example
времена Маркса
is
шахтеры, основное
during Marxist times,
орудие труда шахтера, как
the main tool of production, the main instrument of labor, instrument of labor of a miner. His main instrument of labor was
кирка.
basically a pickaxe,
Кирка.
right?
Совершенно верно.
Exactly. In the 20th century, in this first half of 20th century, probably, what replaced the pickaxe? The power hammer, or the breaker hammer, mechanical pick, rock drill, right?
Это более сложно.
That's a more sophisticated means of production thing.
Сейчас на смену
So the organic composition of capital increased.
отбойному молотку
So now what is replacing this power drill?
угольный комбайн,
Combine, coal combine, or a coal mining machine, harvester. Coal cutter loader replaces the power drill.
ровно машину, соответственно, органическое
So,
строение капитала.
The organic composition of capital increases again.
Рост органического строения капитала к чему приводит?
So increase in organic composition of capital, what does it lead to?
Повышение производительности труда.
Increase of productivity of labor.
Производительность труда как влияет на
How does productivity of labor influence
стоимость?
the value?
Уменьшается стоимость единицы
The cost of a unit
товара.
of a commodity decreases.
Всего-то стоимость единицы товара.
The
Поэтому
unit of a
те
commodity.
капиталисты, которые применяют
value decreases. So the capitalists that use new tools, better tools,
они получают временную выгоду. То есть стоимость единицы товара ниже, чем у других. Они получают временную выгоду. То есть множество. Они получают временную выгоду. То есть стоимость единицы товара ниже, чем у других.
So they get temporary advantages, those capitalists that use better tools, implement better tools, because the cost of a unit of a commodity is lower than the of the other capitalists, the one of the other capitalists. Lower than the average. But generally in economics, you get this average market value. So they sell their product, their commodity, by this average market value, and they get this cream, this surplus, until other capitalists also improve the tools. Now let's get back to this. Okay, so organic composition of capital growth, the surplus value, creation of surplus value, doesn't change things, doesn't change theoretically.
То есть, повторяю, что вот основополагающее положение, что прибавочная стоимость создается живым трудом.
Again, the basic thing here is that the surplus value is created by live labor,
Не перенесенным, а живым трудом рабочего.
not by transferred, but by live labor of a worker.
Рост научно-технический прогресс.
So the progress in science and technical progress, increase of production of labor, in production of labor, can only lead to the fact that more and more product you produce with lesser number of workers. So based on these facts, I make a opposite conclusion that the role of workers actually increases because workers create more product, more surplus value, more new value, which creates two possibilities. First one, that is in Russia today, more and more people are created who aren't employed in productive labor. But they create services and so on. But the number of workers decreases. But there is another way that was used during socialism to decrease working day, length of the working day. That I wanted, about this decrease of the length of working day, I wanted to speak about.
Есть, как говорится, одна сторона удовлетворяет материальные потребности.
So there's one side of the issue.
Развиваться творчески.
To meet your physical needs, and there's the other side of the issue, to develop yourself.
А это еще развиваться творчески.
So evolve creatively. Develop yourself in a creative way.
Вектор развития
So the vector, so to say, vector of the development of humankind as a whole will speak about it, although it's not correct, it's not exactly correct, but including capitalism, what is the vector? A person should develop himself. It's themselves. The main goal of socialist production is ensuring the full well-being and free all-round development of all members of society. It was stipulated in the program, Lenin-Stalin's program of the party program. Which means that it's not enough just to feed well and dress well and live in certain conditions. You should also develop, a person should also develop the worker, his wife, his kids, the society as a whole, all members of society should develop. What does this mean, creative or all-round development? What does it mean? What does it require? It needs those material conditions, of course, and what else? It requires free time. All-round development requires free time. And how do you get free time? Where can it be taken from? Found. You can get it only by decreasing work time. Working hours. So if you decrease working hours, you'll get free time. And free time is the time for development. Not for, scientifically. In common understanding, it's like so commonly we understand free time as time for anything, drinking, hobbies, but actually free time is free time for development. So how do you decrease working hours? There's only one way to increase productivity of labor. The most important category in political economy is the productivity of labor. It is how many commodities can you produce per unit of time. But there is an opposite category, more exact one, is the capacity of labor, or labor content. It is characterized by expenses of labor, amount of labor that is required to create product per unit of time. So, what happens in capitalist conditions? Because capital is a form of development of productive forces. And it's a more progressive system compared to feudalism, slave ownership, slave ownery. The productivity of labor is increased. So the capitalist that uses on his production, for his production, more progressive methods of production, more productive machines, the cost of a unit of commodity becomes lower than of the others. And on the market, average prices dominate. So this capitalist will get temporary additional income temporarily. So, of course, if the cost is on this level and he's got it on the lower level and the market values in between, so he will get this profit. So the question is, who will get this additional income? Capitalist or a worker? Right, the capitalist will get it. But under one condition, if the workers are going to keep silent. But if they demand, so he gets, yes, normal income and added income, because the productivity of labor grows.
А я хочу о другом сказать, что добавить. Да, получит капиталист, это конкретно. Если рабочие будут молчать, ничего не будут предпринимать.
So if the workers will do nothing, the capitalist will get it. And if they make demands, if it's the working class is organized, they make demands, not just increase wages, but decrease working hours, working day hours. If you look at the papers that you have here on the table that I gave you, so the Workers' Party of Russia stands for the 6-hour working day. Are you against that? For a decrease to 6 hours with the same or better level of wages? Is this economically justified? Feasible. Is it economically feasible? So I've got a very good book here, The Decrease of Working Day and the Grounds for Modern Economic Development. The authors are doctors of economic sciences, Zolotov, Alexander Zolotov, and Mikhail Popov. It's a very good book, issued by Polytechnical University, by the Polytechnical University of St. Petersburg, I guess. It's got numbers, calculations, tables. So, the level of production of labor that modern society has achieved in developed countries, including Russia, allows to decrease the working hours to 6 hours a day easily, without decreasing the wages or the level of consumption. Even without this, we can compare this situation with the one that was 700 years ago. The early 20th century, working Russia, so workers of Russia, by way of accomplished fact, without any permission from capitalists, simply installed 8-hour working day. So they simply started working 8 hours a day instead of 12, 14, and so on. And what was the length of the working day in Tsarist Russia? 11 hours. Yeah, around that. And all the other workers all around the world followed the Russian working class and did the same. Started working for 8 hours. But since that time, the productivity of labor grew manifold.
Ну, совсем по-простому, производительность труда – это, так сказать,
Productivity of
такое явление,
labor
которое позволяет, так сказать, больше производить товар.
is something that a phenomenon that allows to produce more commodities while spending less labor.
Частный пример. То есть сейчас производится достаточное питание,
So,
продовольствие,
for example, today there is enough food
чтобы обеспечить население.
to provide
Прежде всего у нас в России.
for the population here in Russia.
Санкции, когда были введены,
As you remember, when they introduced
показывали по телевизору,
sanctions
сжигали,
on TV,
давили тракторами продукты
and when they destroyed food,
питания и
burned
прочее,
it.
прочее. Да. Ну, это как частный пример. То есть уровень производительности труда
So the level of
сегодняшний
productivity of
России
labor
позволяет безболезненно сократить рабочий день
level
до 6 часов.
allows easily, without any problems, to decrease the working hours to 6 hours a
Вот в
day.
расчетах нормы прибавочной стоимости.
So you can see that in calculations of the surplus value ratio.
Хотя нам не понять, конечно, что в голове капиталиста.
Of course, we cannot know what is inside the capitalist's head.
Таким с 8 часов до 6.
So let's decrease the working hours from 8 hours a day to 6 hours a day, like so.
Пока поставим вопрос, пускай, ну, все равно капиталист останется. И рабочий будет получать зарплату. И уменьшится, так сказать, немного прибыль капиталиста.
The profit of a capitalist will slightly decrease. Workers will get more, but nothing scary, nothing really bad will happen, right?
Возвращаясь к вашему вопросу.
That's not scary for the worker, but it's scary for a capitalist.
Да, да,
Yep, in a way. Just a second. Let me finish. So,
Еще раз повторяю.
again,
Есть такие принципиальные положения,
there are principal things,
в которых или фундаментальные, так сказать,
or
фундамент, на
fundamental,
котором стоит дом.
a fundament that a house stands on, figuratively speaking.
Маркса
So one of the fundamental stipulations of Marx,
это что стоимость создается живым
something that he
трудом.
proved, that the value is created by life labor of a worker.
Неправильно сказал. Новая стоимость.
New value is created by life labor.
То есть прибавочная стоимость и заработная плата.
Surplus value and wages.
И все. Все остальное идет.
That's it. The rest goes
Распределение. Это созданное. Присвоение сначала.
at first they acquire this. At first this value is acquired, then distributed.
Распределение. Созданное рабочим прибавочной стоимостью.
This surplus value is acquired, then distributed. Surplus value created by a worker is acquired and distributed. There's a concept called income and surplus value. They are connected, but they are different. You probably heard what income is, right? Surplus value you have probably also heard of. If you've read Marxist literature, it contains that term. That category. So what is the connection, what is the relation between them? So I should give you the exact definition of income. Income is transformed form, changed form of surplus value, the transformed form of surplus value which acts as a product of all capital advanced. So, surplus value is also a class concept. It is created by the labor of hired workers, of workers on a capitalist plant, capitalist production. But income is this surface category, superficial, that exists in the head of a capitalist, actually.
Он
So
имеет
let's
какие-то деньги, которые хочет,
look from a capitalist point of view of a capitalist.
как капитал.
So he has certain money that he wants to spend as capital.
Капитал. На этот
So
капитал он
capital.
покупает что только
Using this capital,
рабочую силу.
is it just the workforce or labor power he buys with this capital? No, he also buys means of production. So he spends his capital, the constant and variable capital, or wage and non-wage capital, to get the means of production and labor power, or workforce. And for him, the whole capital, the result of capital's work is certain surplus, income. So in a capitalist's head, this income that he received is the result of all advanced capital. So that's what's on the surface. Although if you get closer, even closer to surface of things, that also isn't exactly so, because capitalist doesn't care what to produce, cannons or butter. What's the most important thing for him? To get the same size capital for the same size income. Equal sized capital for the equal sized income. So, suppose you and me are two capitalists. You got 1 billion rubles of capital and I've got 1 billion. You produce cannons, I produce butter. You get 100 million of income for your billion, and I've got 500 million. How are you gonna feel about that? Very unhappy. So there exists a mechanism, so to say, of there's a mechanism of inter-industry competition that equalizes these average income ratios. But that's also just the very beginning. Then there are merchant capitalists that also whose function is also important. They realize they sell these goods, these commodities produced by the industrial capitalists. There are also bankers, monetary capitalists that give you, loans, and all they need income, equal-sized income for their equal-sized capital. So, as the result, it all gets to the same level, equal. But in conditions of monopolist capitalism, imperialism, there are also certain factors added. Some more factors are added. So, the same things are happening, but from the point of view of a worker, they look like so, and from the point of view of capitalists, the other way. If we look at the surface, it's different. The surface of things. So, getting back to your question, the capitalist. Okay, he's got theater, let's say, for example. He hires actors, singers that sing and give him profit, brought him profit. So on the very surface, what does he get?
Вот рабочие,
What
которые
do we get?
непонятно, чем они занимаются, они даже лишние. Вот певец вышел.
You don't even need the workers there. They're excessive. You don't need them. The singer earns everything, right?
Выступил, принес капиталисту прибыль, у него производительный труд. То есть здесь
So his labor is productive
столько
here.
всего наслаивается.
So there are so many factors that go, that are layered upon this.
Но можно здесь окончательно запутаться и потерять нить.
So you can just, so you can easily get entangled here and lose the thread.
Если вот эту всю цепочку не раскрутить.
If you don't unfold this whole chain.
То есть еще раз, прибавочная стоимость.
Again, surplus value is created by the labor of hired workers on the surface of capitalist relations.
А в сфере поверхности капиталистических отношений принимает форму прибыли.
The surplus value on the surface of capitalist relations turns into a form of income. Into the form of income. So income is the form of surplus layer on the surface of capitalist relations. And income, in its turn,
Не создают, а приносят для капиталиста.
Brings to the capitalist.
Люди, занимающиеся непроизводительным трудом, оказываются.
So the income is not created, but is brought to the capitalist, can be brought by the capitalist, to the capitalist, by the people who don't do productive labor, who just render services.
И врачи, учителя.
Doctors, teachers, singers, etc. and many
У
others.
вас вопрос был.
Виктор Иванович,
А сейчас ответим, давайте на это.
можно это говорить?
So what's your
Все
question?
логично. Я с вами согласен полностью.
This
Вы
guy
мне
again.
доказали только одно, что даже
You
высокотехнологичная
only proved one thing,
прибавочная стоимость создается и вновь
that even in that the
стоимость и прибавочная создается трудом
surplus
рабочих.
value is created by the labor of a
Но
worker.
с
But
ростом третий том,
so he repeats
стал
his
знаменитый закон
position.
падения средней нормы прибыли
Third volume of Capital.
с ростом органического строения капитала.
When the average ratio of production falls with the increase of organic composition of capital, great Marx says that the share of C2V will increase constantly and the other share will constantly fall. Exactly.
Так а вывод-то какой?
Yeah, but what is the conclusion we make here?
Так вот вывод какой? Все-таки
Conclusion is
создает прибавочную стоимость в высокотехнологичном обществе.
so is that value creates added value in a highly technological society.
Давайте.
I'll try to answer this. The C that you are annoyed by, it is created by the labor of a worker previously. That's previous labor. So this labor is already invested here. If the formerly created labor wouldn't be invested here, then this C wouldn't increase and wouldn't be a problem for you. Yeah, but the C will constantly increase. Yes, it will, because
как говорится, ну, если начнем первобытное общество, там была палка-копалка, да? Сейчас ведь
so it depends on the instrument we use. Like in a primitive society, we used the digging stake,
лопатой не заставишь.
and now we don't even use shovels.
Надо
Shovels.
молоток или еще что-то и так далее. То есть сколько труда уже вложено людьми. Они
So lots of labor has been already invested by people.
Принесли прибыль своим и капиталистам, и феодалам, и кому это таким образом.
Historically.
Поэтому в любом случае
So in any case,
человеческий труд
human labor is invested in C. Okay, they argue again. No one will argue with what you assert. Nor Marx, nor others, but so this is the fact of life, so to say. The increase of organic composition of capital. So C increases faster than V, but this influences the income ratio. This influences the rate of return. So there is surplus value and income. They're connected, but they're different level things, different facts. So anyways, they're gonna discuss this question further. So I'm not gonna translate the rest, they go into too much detail. It's hard to translate and not very useful to you, I guess. So yeah, here's the idea, the main idea. I think I have already translated. That a worker works for this much time for himself, this much time for himself, and this much time for the capitalist. So, okay, let's finish here. Bye.